Dan Tehan says it's not about China, but I tell you what, it's the one common theme that all of those four countries have, is they've all got beef with China.
Peter, it's an extremely positive development that the Quad is being upgraded in this way and in such an early time in the new Biden administration. It was an initiative that really got off the ground under the Trump administration at the foreign minister level, but for it to be so quickly elevated to the leader level shows there is a degree of bipartisanship in Washington when it comes to Indo-Pacific security issues, and it's immensely encouraging and important for Australia. Dan Tehan is, of course, right. It's not about any one country, but it is about the security and stability of the Pacific. And I'd be lying to you and your viewers if I didn't acknowledge that activities of the Chinese Communist Party, in particular in the South China Sea, have undermined security and stability in the Indo-Pacific. And that's of great concern to our fellow like-minded liberal democracies and other countries in the region.
But the reason why, I mean, it's been elevated so quickly, Senator, does that suggest that there's a degree of urgency here?
Well, it suggests there's lots of areas for cooperation with like-minded countries when it comes to maritime security, to cyber security and critical infrastructure, to COVID-19, to climate change. There's a whole range of issues that we'll be cooperating with because we see the world in a very similar way to countries like Japan, India and, of course, the United States, our principal treaty ally.
Is it inflammatory for China?
I don't think there's anything... I don't think there's anything inflammatory about like-minded countries working together to uphold the rules-based order, and in doing so, we'll be upholding the interests of all the region and all of our neighbours. It'll be a very welcome news for our partners and friends in countries like Indonesia and the Philippines and Malaysia and in the Pacific, because they welcome our engagement in the region and they welcome us helping to uphold the architecture of the region, which supports the peace and prosperity and stability for all countries.
OK, you've got your first day today, Senator, as chair of the Parliamentary Joint Committee on Intelligence and Security. It's a bit of a tongue twister, that one, but you've got your hearings that begin on right-wing extremism today. You've got foreign interference tomorrow at universities. Just on the first front about right-wing extremism, where do you think we are at that point?
Actually, Peter, the inquiry today is into some new powers for the AFP, seeking 3 new types of warrant to effectively disrupt online criminal activity and criminal network activity, from everything from child sex offenders to terrorism. But you're right, we will soon be commencing an inquiry into extremism and radicalism. And this is in recognition of the fact that ASIO and other agencies have warned us that although Islamist extremism and terrorism remains the principal security and safety threat for Australians, there has been a growing and worrying rise in right-wing, far-right extremism, and it is taking up an increasing amount of their time and resources, and they are very concerned about it. And so it is timely that the Principal Security Committee of the Parliament reviews whether our laws and policies are sufficient to combat that threat.
So today's committee hearing is then, like you said there, about more powers, or giving police and our security agencies more powers.
That's right. So the AFP is seeking, along with the Criminal Intelligence Organisation, is seeking 3 new types of warrants: a data disruption warrant, a network activity warrant, and a account takeover warrant. And each of those are designed to allow the AFP to get into the systems of criminal networks operating in Australia and disrupt and dismantle them, to prevent them from engaging in crime, to collect intelligence on those criminal organisations and to bolster their cases by collecting more evidence to use against these individuals. Now, we'll be hearing today from agencies about the necessity of these new powers, and from some civil society groups like the Carly Ryan Foundation and the Uniting Church, who strongly support the powers. We'll also be hearing from groups like the Law Council of Australia and the Human Rights Law Centre, who have some concerns about the civil liberties implications of these new powers. And it's up to the committee to weigh that up and make recommendations for the Parliament to consider.
And just tomorrow, and just finally, Senator, foreign interference tomorrow, and that's about universities, and that's all about China too, right?
Well, there's been a number of high-profile incidents at Australian universities over the last few years which have alarmed not just me, not just the government, but parties and members of Parliament across the entire political spectrum. When you have issues like Drew Pavlu's victimisation as a student at the University of Queensland for his activism on Chinese human rights, or Elaine Pearson, an academic at the University of New South Wales, who had her work censored criticising China on human rights. It is clear that some universities are not managing these risks appropriately and sufficiently, and this inquiry will be looking for both good practice from universities that we can celebrate and encourage the rest of the sector to follow, but also examples of poor and inadequate practices that really need a light shone upon them so they can be addressed.
OK, Senator, good luck with that. We'll talk to you soon.